Why did you decide to apply?
Well, I think I knew what course I wanted to do after a bit of deliberation, and ultimately it is the best university in the country for the course I wanted to do. And also the course structure is quite traditional, so it's quite science-based, and then you do your clinical separately. And I was torn between medicine and kind of wanted to do some scientific research or maybe natural sciences, so it kind of was the best course for me in terms of a heavy emphasis on science, which is what I enjoyed.
What was your first impression when you arrived?
So before I went to Cambridge, I actually stayed on a shadowing scheme, and that was in year 12. So I'd already not just seen the university on an open day, but I actually stayed over sort of in an environment with students as opposed to with members of staff and the faculty of the university sort of giving you talks and things like that. It was more about integrating yourself into the college community. So I stayed in the college I'm at now, which is Jesus College. And in fact, I actually stayed in the room I now live in, which is really weird because I came in and the name of the person I shadowed is actually like on the door frame. So I was like, oh, it's the same room. So I guess my first impression was quite welcoming, and I sort of felt like I fit in as soon as I got to Cambridge this time round because I'd already been in the same college before and met people. And so really, I think I had a good first impression, whereas if you haven't done that, maybe it's your first time, it can be a bit daunting, I can imagine. So,
what are the people like?
well, I think the strange thing is that, not to sound sort of weird, big-headed or anything like that, but like everyone is exceptionally clever or exceptionally good, not necessarily all round, but in their subject, and everyone's sort of there for the same reason and is very into academia and learning. So that's sort of something that it's not always in the foreground. It's kind of like you kind of forget sometimes and forget that everyone's just as clever as you and things like that. So that's always in the background, but generally everyone sort of is really friendly, and I get on really well with my staircase who I live with. There's about 11 of us, and then you make friends with all the people on your course. And then the college community is quite close as well, so you get to know your whole year and stuff like that. And there's lots of support from people in second year and things like that. So basically, loads and loads of people, and everyone's really sort of up for meeting new people. So.
That kind of explained, but overall, what's the atmosphere like?
So I think everything's kind of not overshadowed, but sort of built around the fact that your timetable is incredibly packed, like everyone's busy. So that's sort of a part of the atmosphere, in that you kind of, in your free time, everyone's trying to pack as much as they can into their free time when they're not working. So I think it's quite like a buzzing, vibrant atmosphere, because it's only an 8-week term, so a lot's being put into it. So everyone's sort of, I don't know, I don't think anyone's sort of lazing around, and everyone's kind of getting involved in stuff. So that kind of forms most of the atmosphere, I think.
Okay, so what does it mean to you coming from Noel-Baker to be amongst Cambridge?
I think it's something that you don't, once you get there, you don't really think about a lot, because although there's loads of people at Cambridge from all sorts of different backgrounds, and actually quite a lot more people from state schools than what people think, in terms of, I think it's about 60%. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but it's more than people think anyway. So I'm not entirely massively different to anyone else, but definitely I think it's something to be proud of, being from Noel-Baker. But it's not something that comes up in terms of like people don't care where you're from. That's not what it's about. It's about what you're doing when you're there.
Do you think your life experiences at Noel-Baker have prepared you for Cambridge?
Yeah, I think definitely as much as they could have done, they've prepared me for the experiences, but there's a lot of things that you can't really prepare for or sort of expect in terms of like the weird Cambridge bubble that it exists in, with the quirky sort of wearing gowns, going to formal halls and things like that. I think even if you know they're going to happen, you don't really expect you to sort of fall into the sort of routine and actually enjoy doing those sort of things that you might from the outside think are a bit weird. So obviously things like that don't happen at Noel-Baker, so that hasn't prepared me for those. But in terms of academic work and things like that, it's a massive jump, and I don't think you can comprehend how big a jump it's going to be until you're in it and it's thrown at you and you're in at the deep end. But I definitely think that Noel-Baker's prepared me to sort of meet the demands of the job as much as it could, if not to be aware exactly what it's going to be like when I'm there.
What are the biggest cultural differences between Noel-Baker and Cambridge?
I think a massive factor is the sort of wealth of backgrounds in terms of we've got a lot of international students, and then also just students from within the UK that are from all over the country for one, and then also from different backgrounds, so whether they went to private school, state school, things like that. And you've got sort of people that cycled for GB and were going to go to Rio, or people that were synchronised swimming champions. So there's just these sort of, I don't know, everyone's so diverse and they have such a sort of wealth of interests that it's much greater than at Noel-Baker. So there's definitely a lot more going on, and a lot of sort of new people to meet, and sort of new experiences in life, and people that you haven't encountered before. So that's a big difference. And also sort of there's a massive culture of sort of formal halls and meals and things like that. Like you eat dinner and drink with your professors and sort of directors of studies and supervisors and things like that. So you have a lot closer relationship with the people that are teaching you, as opposed to at school, where obviously that's not really appropriate.
So a lot of people say that Cambridge looks like Hogwarts. What do you think about this?
I think a lot of the sort of grand old buildings and the fact that we go to formal hall and we do actually wear gowns does kind of resemble Hogwarts from the outside. I don't know, it's kind of like a quirky experience, and it is quite fun, and you settle into it and you actually quite enjoy going to formal hall and things like that. And it's all about carrying on traditions that have been going on sort of for hundreds and hundreds of years at Cambridge and Oxford as well. And to think that you're sort of sitting in a hall wearing a gown, and this is something that, say, like, I don't know, Stephen Hawking did at Gomberlin Quays, for example, when he was an undergraduate. So I think it's more important not to think about how much it's like Hogwarts, but how much you're sort of emulating the past experience of some of the great people that went to university. I think that's what's more important to me. And carrying on the traditions, like, it does seem a bit outdated and a bit out of touch, but I don't think it's done in the same spirit as it may have been in the past. So it's not about sort of being elitist and wearing a gown and being better than people that don't wear a gown. It's just carrying on the Cambridge traditions, and it's sort of a fun, quirky thing we do that other people may see as weird, but we're not doing it in the way that people think is the best way to answer that.
So you said that's a bit quirky. What other things happen at Cambridge?
So a big part of sort of your social life is going to formal hall. So you would sort of book a ticket, pay. It's not particularly expensive, and you get like a 3-course meal, tea and coffee at the end, and you do sit sort of in formal dress and with a gown. And there's some weird, bizarre things with gongs and Latin and things like that. But it's all sort of, basically, it's just keeping with the traditions, but also giving an opportunity for everyone to sit down together and talk and socialise and meet new people. So it's definitely sort of a way to do that, because at first, when you go to your first few formals, it's very weird for everyone, and everyone's kind of thrown in this bizarre situation. So your immediate thing is kind of turn around to the person next to you and go, "Well, this is a bit weird, isn't it?" And it's kind of like a conversation starter, and it's a lot of fun, I think. And then also trying to think of some other weird things. I think something that's kind of weird at first is getting used to people's sort of massive dedication to things they do, or the fact that people put so much into stuff. Like the people that row and get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go and row, and then they get dressed, cycle to a lecture. It's like, I can never wake up at 5 a.m. and row, but I think it's bizarre how much people put into everything, and kind of getting used to that, definitely.
Okay. So outside of your academic work, how does your social life work, and how do they work alongside each other?
Right, so I think in general, not particularly for me, a lot of people do sports and things like that. So that's like a first level of people's sort of social or fun stuff that they want to do. So that's quite a regimented schedule. So you would have training and matches and things like that. So that kind of fits in well in terms of you can slot it in to particular times and stuff like that. So that's something, and also sort of volunteering schemes. I'm involved in some student volunteering as an access officer, so I sometimes would help out in school visits and talks and things like that. So those things kind of, you get specific dates, you can put it in your calendar and you know in advance when things are going to be, so you can easily plan your work around it. But then also sort of week to week, you've got formal halls which are flexible, just dependent on like people who have them for their birthdays and things like that. So that's in the evening, so it'd be sort of 7:30 till 9, so you can easily get all your work done before or after and just sort of chill at formal hall and relax. So actually I think it's quite a good thing to encourage you to relax and not do work all the time, because if you booked a formal hall 2 weeks in advance, even if you've got a big workload, I think it's important not to go, can't have a social life, got to do my work, because then you get in a rut and you kind of get stuck in it. So there's that, and then also obviously Cambridge, like anywhere else, has clubs and nightlife. I don't think they're particularly amazing compared to the rest of the country, but I think the more important thing is that you're going out with your friends and everyone around you is from a similar, sort of having a similar experience at Cambridge, and you can talk to them and things like that. So, yeah.
So how are the teaching styles at Noel-Baker and the teaching styles at Cambridge different?
So I think at Noel-Baker you've got sort of small class sizes at A level, and if you don't get something sort of in the middle of a lesson, you can just put your hand up or ask the teacher to clarify before you move on to the next part of the lesson and things like that. So that's definitely different, because the main method of sort of getting information is through lectures at Cambridge, and there'll be sort of 290 medics in a lecture hall, and you can't just sort of interrupt a lecture partway through and say, oh sorry, what was this? You kind of have to, one, definitely be on the ball. You can't sort of miss something and then ask about it because you weren't listening. Like, you have to pay attention more, and also if the lecturer hasn't explained something and you don't get it, you can go up at the end and ask the lecturer themselves, but sometimes it's better to think, oh actually, if the lecturer hasn't explained it, how it's gelled with me the first time, then maybe I need to get it from somewhere else, because the same concept's going to be explained in loads of different places. So it's being more aware of that, because at A level you kind of have your A level textbook and your teacher. You've got two sources, or maybe the internet as well obviously, but really you focus on those two things. Whereas at degree level, you've got lectures, you've got supervisors at Cambridge, you've got sort of various academics at your college as well, you've got your fellow students that might be able to explain it to you, and there's lots of those, and then just loads of textbooks in the college library. So I think being more able to find information that you want, find it quickly, and take something for yourself is very important. But we do have supervisors in our college, so they happen in small groups. You get supervisions with about 3, maybe 4 other medics, and you'll be sitting with an academic that will be sort of an expert in the subject, and they'll talk you through stuff. And it kind of is a bit like an interview in that they'll ask you questions and say like, oh, well, what's this and what's that? And if you get it wrong, it's not a big deal. They'll try and explain it to you. It's just to see if you're following the lecture material. So although you've got this big emphasis on independent work, it's not like you're just left to your own devices with no help. If you're really struggling with something and you can't find some way to explain it, you can always ask your supervisor and they'll explain it for you. And also, sometimes you think you get something and you don't. Your supervisor asking you those questions is going to actually find out whether you know something, because if you can explain something to other people, I think that means you know it. Whereas if you don't try and do that, sometimes you can think you get it when you don't. But that's the main difference.
So do you think the teaching styles at Noel-Baker did prepare you for?
Yeah, I think obviously A-levels are taught in the way they are for a specific reason. That's the best way to teach them at that stage. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the teaching style that hasn't prepared me for Cambridge. I think that inevitably there's going to be a difference. But Noel-Baker, obviously, during UCAS and talking about universities, do tell you that the teaching style will be different, and they do instill in you skills in terms of independent research, and you get set work at school that you have to research for yourself, and those are the kind of things you're going to do at uni. So although you're not doing it on a regular basis to the same extent, you are prepared on how to do it and the skills you need, so definitely, yeah.
So what would you say to people who are thinking about and would want to go to Cambridge?
So I think this question kind of addresses Cambridge and also Oxford, that kind of experience. I think the most important thing, first of all, is to dispel a few of the myths, because although people will tell you when they go to Oxford and Cambridge that everyone's really clever and things like that, no one is a genius. Everyone has this thing where they're like, oh, I'm not a genius and everyone there's going to be a genius. I mean, I'm certainly not a genius. I just happen to know a lot about a specific area, and that's why I'm studying medicine. And for example, someone studying English knows a lot about English literature, but they're not a genius, they don't know everything. So I think dispelling that first of all, in terms of if you're good at your subject and you love your subject, you are good enough to go to Oxford and Cambridge. So it's not about being good at everything. They're looking for people that have depth of knowledge, not breadth. So that's important first of all. And then also sort of dispelling the fact that yes, Cambridge does have some problems in terms of encouraging certain people to apply and things like that, but on a whole, like, I've not experienced any sort of prejudice from being from a state school. I mean, there's loads of people at Oxbridge from state schools, and it's not sort of disadvantaged me at all. So that's something. Don't go into it thinking, oh, everyone's from a private school or everyone's going to have a posh southern accent, because that just doesn't happen. There's people from Scotland, Newcastle, Southampton, everywhere. So definitely that anyone can fit in, and it's not hard to fit in. I think they do a lot of things there to help you fit in. For example, you get a college family, which originally sounds a bit weird because you get like a mum and dad, and can be quite confusing to your parents as to whether you're referring to them or your college family. But it's more like a mentor scheme. So your mum and dad are kind of like there to help you settle in your first term, and you'll get one of your parents will be from your subject and give you academic advice, but then your other parent won't be, but both parents will give you sort of pastoral advice and sort of how to fit in, or even things just like where is the university library, can you tell me, things like that. So little things, and also if you have any sort of big problems that you encounter, you can see them as well. And then you've also got like tutorial advisors that you can talk to, your supervisors you can talk to. So I think as well, looking at it, it may seem daunting, but there's so much support and so many people you can turn to for anything really, no question silly. So there's that as well. So I think the best point is to seriously think about things and research it and talk to people that have been there, as opposed to looking at everything sort of superficially and saying like, oh, but someone said this and someone said that and this is going to happen, because not everything that's out there is true. So definitely there's that. And then in terms of motivation to go to Cambridge or Oxford, you just need to love your subject. And obviously there's a certain academic standard that you have to meet, but that standard's set at the level it's set at. So don't worry about whether you got 11 A stars or 12 A stars, because I mean, I know people that didn't do particularly well at GCSE that have got into Cambridge, and Cambridge don't have a GCSE requirement specifically because they don't have one. It's not, when they say you can still get in with high levels if your GCSEs are down, they're not just saying that. Sort of some people think that when they don't set a level, it still exists, but they just don't tell anyone, but that's not true. So again, probably look for the information from Cambridge itself as opposed to from other people.
Yeah, there do seem to be like a lot of rumours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's just being careful about sort of Cambridge myths and Cambridge truths.
Yeah.
But they're very easy to clear up very quickly. So you can always, I mean, they're really, really helpful themselves in admissions. You can phone up admissions people at various different colleges at Oxford and Cambridge, or you can go to open days and they'll be very friendly and answer any of your questions. So that's the best.
So do you think your life experiences at Noel-Baker have prepared you for Cambridge?
I think as well as they could have done, yes, definitely, but ultimately university is a very different experience, especially Cambridge. It kind of exists in its own little bubble with its own sort of weird, quirky things like wearing gowns, that's my phone, wearing gowns and sort of going to formal hall and all these weird things.
Do you think your life experiences at Noel-Baker have prepared you for Cambridge?
Wait 1 second, I'm like gonna...
It's going to snot everywhere.
Yeah, no, I've got like a sneeze, you know, one of those, there's not actually a sneeze, but you might sneeze, but you don't in the end, like now. Anyway, right, sorry, I didn't want to sneeze there halfway through. Yeah, leave that bit in.
So do you think your life experiences...
I'm never going to get this question done.
So how much does Cambridge relate to Hogwarts?
That's sort of a analogy people say a lot. I think sort of walking around wearing gown. No, right, okay.